Tom Brady on the OTAs. He joined a call for the NFL Players Association and delivered an impassioned speech calling for unity among the players in what Brady believes should be, quote, very intense negotiations, end quote, with coaches on modifying off-season work rules. Quote, there's no fucking pro baseball player that's throwing 95 miles per hour in mid-December, end quote. Brady said, referring to the league's offseason activities as, quote, overly competitive prior to providing such an example, excuse me. So, guys, what do we think about this? Do we think the NFL needs to cool it, needs to give their players a little off-season space before they get a move in? The players have called for all non-necessary off-season in-person workouts to be canceled this year, including voluntary OTAs and mandatory minimums. Wrong podcast. Mandatory mini camps. 21 teams have already opted out in total on voluntary OTAs, the first being the Denver Broncos and the most recent being the New York Football Giants and the New York Jets. And the Tennessee Titans, I actually believe, are the most recent. Um, and so, with that in mind, guys, do we think that we should see long-term changes to the NFL's off-season schedule?
As far as eliminating the voluntary workouts, as far as eliminating the off-season OTAs, I think it's it's a good idea, I think, to an extent, right? I think we should definitely make the voluntary minicamps completely voluntary because it's weird the way the contracts are written. Sometimes they're voluntary, sometimes they're not, but
Voluntary.
they're voluntary, yeah, if you want to get paid. But then, the OTAs are where you get into a bit of a mixed bag, I think, for me, because I genuinely think that when you're a rookie and you're just coming in, or if you're on a roster, or if you're like on the bubble for a roster spot, I think that's a situation where OTAs help you out significantly because you're able to build rapport with the team, you're able to build rapport with the coaches, you're able to show the coaches your conditioning, you're able to show them where you are in your development as a player. And I think that's important. So I wouldn't go so far as completely eliminating those. Now, where I think Brady has a point, and I think he has 2 points here that are very crucial to the argument. One is the analogy he made about baseball players not throwing 95 miles per hour in mid-December. I think that's actually spot on. Like I think having full contact, things before training camp, I think that can be very dangerous. We've seen many times players getting injured. I know Dennis Pitta, for any Ravens fan out there, twice back-to-back seasons dislocating his hip on contact injuries during mini camps, not even training camp, mini camp. Like those are bad. Those are bad things that happen sometimes. So I think maybe toning that down is definitely good for the game. And honestly, I think veterans who've been playing the game for a long time, I don't think they need it. Like, let's be honest, they don't need it. It's been shown. How do you elongate someone's career who's been playing in the NFL for 10 years? You allow them to rest in the offseason because they know how to condition their bodies. They know how to do all that kind of stuff. At this point, they're professionals. They can do it. And don't give me that, Look at Tom Brady, prime example of that. So
Tom Brady is not driving Ubers on TikTok.
Odell hasn't been in the league for 10 years. I'm completely ignoring whatever you just said. So I think it's proven that older players, veterans, they know how to condition their bodies. It's better for their careers if you don't make them go through unnecessary mini camps and unnecessary OTAs, and then have everyone show up at training camp, and then you can go like whatever, you can turn up the throttle then. But that's where I think he has a point. And I think that eliminating it completely though would hurt young players. I actually do believe that because you need to be able to develop young players. You need to be able to show them, situational types of plays. You need to have them actually have develop some football memory, some instinctual memory in playing the game. So I think it's like so it's weird. I know I'm like playing around with it or whatever, but that's honestly what I think is true. I think like for younger players, completely eliminating OTAs is bad. So for older players, they probably should be at OTA. So maybe have a happy medium. Like let's slow OTAs down a little bit, and then make it completely voluntary for veterans. Let's say, like, if you whatever 5 years out of college. I don't know what the minimum would be. I'm not in part of these negotiations. I'm just a commentator. But like, you guys know what I'm saying.
So I wanna add on to the baseball analogy. I kind of want to pick that and run for a little bit.
Well,
Uh,
let me just start by
we
saying Jacob DeGrom rolls out of bed and throws 95 regardless of the season. So we're
That's
just
true. Well, I like that you bring up DeGrom because DeGrom is one of these guys. You talk about how many pitches are in your baseball life, right? Because a pitcher only has so many bullets in his arm before he can't pick up his kit anymore, right? Before he retires at 38 and his arm falls off, it doesn't work anymore. I don't you guys don't know if you listen to Starting Nine, the Barstool baseball podcast with Dallas Braden and Jared Carrabis. But Dallas Braden talks about how he got cortisone shots and platelet rich plasma therapy to try to revive his arm at the end of his career, and everything he did. He's topping out at 84, and he lifting his left arm above here hurts now, and he can't do shit with his shoulder anymore. And I think that you see with DeGrom, the reason why he's he's in his early 30s still pitching the way he's pitching is because he missed years. He started pitching late, right? He wasn't a pitcher until his last season in college, and even then he didn't come out until he was like 22. He didn't make his debut until he was 25. And now he's 33. With not a lot of minor league time pitching and not a lot of major league time pitching, right? And so you're looking at a
a lot of
guy
hardware though. He does have
a lot of hardware. But you're looking at a guy who's 33, who could pitch into his mid 40s, who's throwing harder, than anybody else in baseball. And I think to transition back to the NFL here, that's kind of the point that Brady is trying to make, is that a human body, similar to an MLB pitcher, a human body can only take so many hits before it starts to wear down. Dennis Pitta gets hurt not because his hip gets hit in a weird place, but because he's taken so many hits in that exact spot that eventually one hit's gonna snap it. One hit's gonna break that bone because that bone is already so weak, right? Yep. And I think that the value, and you're talking about guys, we're not talking about guys who've been taking big hits since college. I got buddies who play in high school that are like, yeah, I had like 5 or 6 concussions in high school, playing linebacker, and we just didn't say anything about it because they needed me on the field, And we're talking about like kids from Chicago. Imagine all these kids from like Texas and Oklahoma and the deep South where football is a way of life, and your brain cells don't matter, and you can run on a football field. That's what we need you for. And so you're talking about preserving players' bodies. Save the hits for the game. Save the hits for the game. They don't need extra reps. They've been doing this since they were 8 years old playing tackle football. They don't need the reps. You want to keep players healthy? Get football players playing track and lacrosse in the offseason to make sure that they have radial movement, right? So they have radial movement so they can have good footwork, so they can create good habits for themselves. And when football season rolls around, it doesn't take too long to get them adjusted to taking hits because they've been doing it since they were 8 years old. Yeah, there's something to be said about getting, in practice reps and about, seeing the speed of the game and getting young kids warmed up to what the NFL games looks like. There absolutely is something to be said about that.
It's for me. It's only like that applies for younger players. If you're a veteran who's been in the NFL for a while, you already know like at a certain point, it's only hurting you. It's only hurting them.
Yeah.
It's only hurting Dennis Pitta at that point in his career. It was only hurting him to have him in OTAs. It would only hurt Tom Brady to have him in OTAs unnecessarily, or even like veterans like Frank Gore, whoever. Right? At a certain point, you just become. Like your conditioning's not really a factor, like that kind of stuff. You just have to give them the ability to play when they're ready. That's it. Like, so I mean, like that's the point I was trying to make. I just said that rookie, like if you're a rookie, it's better for you to have that practice time.
Yeah, I think that on the rookies, it's even more dangerous to give them that play time so early. Because the idea is that you draft these guys not younger, but older, because they're not physically capable of handling the speed of the NFL. A lot of these guys come up And they're smart. They're not dumb. They've been reading defenses their whole lives. But they can't make the plays physically because you need to spend that summer in the NFL weight room with the NFL eating program. You know, you need to get that bulk up. You need to build that muscle memory and those fast twitch fibers. That's where the importance of the non-contact drills that you run, the non-contact weight gaining programs that these NFL programs. But that's why guys get drafted from these big name schools and why players go to these big name schools. Not because they're gonna have, exorbitant success at all times. I mean, you will if you go to Alabama, but you go to these programs in college football because they are going to get you ready for the speed of the NFL game. Nick Saban is running NFL programs with NFL money at Alabama to make sure that when his offensive linemen are drafted, they can take on 290-pound NFL linebackers and NFL linemen who run 4.4, 4.5, 4.6 40s. They're ready to do that on day one. But most players coming out of the NFL draft aren't ready to do that. And I'm not going to put them in that situation in voluntary OTAs, in mandatory mini camps, and in training camps when they're just literally not physically able to do that. That's why players get hurt, right? That's why they tear their ACLs. That's why they have bone injuries and contact injuries, because their bodies can't physically take that yet because they're just not strong enough. And if you take these hits out when they can't handle it, allow them to build up the strength and ability, to run the route. If you're a receiver, you run your routes. If you're a cornerback, you learn the fundamentals. If you're a linebacker, you understand the system. Because if you're putting yourself in the place to make the right play, chances are you're not going to get hurt. If you're in the wrong spot, if you're in a weird situation, if you're doing something wrong, that's going to increase your chances of getting hurt. And at the end of the day, we want to keep these players healthy, safe, and with all of their mental and physical faculties, or at least as much as you can keep them. I get it. The NFL is a violent game. You sign up for a certain amount of physical and mental distress playing a contact sport as your profession. But that doesn't mean we can't do our best to help these people so they don't become things like what happened to, the tragic stories that we hear out of retired players and the tragic losses that we get out of people who struggle with their mental and physical health after they leave the game. And this is a very small and very common sense shift that we can make based on the fact that it only provides marginal tangible benefits. The tangible benefits are marginal and the detriments are very tangibly widespread and negative.
And I like what you said too. I did like what you said about, some of these young kids coming out, they can't take the hits. And you're absolutely right. There were a lot of guys that I saw in college. I'm not going to name them. I think you can kind of figure out some of them that there are some guys who in college, even now, I don't think those guys coming out that were drafted that can take an NFL hit. I do think the minute Ndamukong Suh gets his hands on them, some of them quarterbacks, he might break them in half. I saw one quarterback in particular in a bowl game. He got sacked by a corner. The corner got ejected for hitting him too hard, and that quarterback didn't get up. So I do agree with what you're saying that a lot of these young kids cannot handle it, and that's why I think the OTAs, they are important. But I think nothing is more important though than getting these guys ready for the NFL.
Thanks for watching this video from Real Take Sports Talk. Remember to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Also remember to check out our live show every single Thursday at 8 p.m. right here on the YouTube channel. And remember, keep it real.